Welcome, welcome. Sunday Mike's, another show here at 11 p.m. Sunday night here in sunny, ever sunny Amsterdam. Actually, not so sunny these days, but anyway, we are here and we are so pleased that you took the time to show up this evening. Whether you're watching this live right now or if you catch this in the rerun, hey, greetings. Thank you. First up tonight, thank you so much from Atlanta, Georgia. Um, Whether you're watching this live or you're watching this in the rerun, I appreciate you taking your time because your time is valuable and spending a little bit of it with me is really greatly appreciated. So, how is everybody out there doing? I am doing fine myself. Let me make some adjustments here. Yeah, ever since I did the update to my iPhone here, when I do it doesn't do it any other time. Or like for example, if I were doing WhatsApp or something and using video, it doesn't do it. But for this, every now and then I have to tap the screen for the last couple of weeks. So hopefully tonight we won't have that happen. We will see. Jesse. Hey Jesse, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for showing up tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Well, it was an interesting week this week in terms of guitars, always in terms of guitars. I had the opportunity to go every 6 months. We have the Vintage Guitar Show that's held in Veenendaal. Um, Not about maybe 50-minute train ride from Amsterdam, and not so bad. And this year was no different. So I went to the Vintage Trade Show on Saturday, yesterday, and it was quite an eye-opening thing. Now, I didn't shoot any video or do anything like that because it seems like on YouTube, and I did a few where I shot the show and a couple other places. And they were some of my lowest viewed videos, you know. And then I went around and looked at other guys who had shot videos for, hey, Mickey, welcome, who had shot videos of vintage shows. And those also were just not well received. I don't think people want to see footage of you walking around taking pictures of guitars. I guess it's one of those, it ain't nothing like the real thing. I don't know. That's kind of weird. Things that people will go for on video and the things they won't. But it seems like that's not something that people are too interested in. So I didn't shoot any video. I took a few pictures, other ones that I found interesting. And maybe I'll share that on my community channel board. But one thing that I did notice that I found very interesting was that Strats were aplenty, more so than I've seen in the last few years. I've been going for a few years now, enough to qualify to me to say so. Hey, welcome. How are you? Dewey's in the house. Welcome, welcome. To say that they were Strat heavy yesterday, and I mean the whole range of Strats you could find in there. And I was really surprised by the Fenders, the American made and the Mexican made ones as well, that those were going for not as much as I thought that they would. A lot of them were sub 1,000 euros, or roughly about $970, we'll say. And yeah, it was very, very, very interesting. I saw a lot of great Strats. I saw so many nice ones. And as I told you before, I never really paid a lot of attention to Strats. As recently something I've gotten into and started digging into. But yeah, I saw, hardtail Strats from the 50s. I saw a lot of American-made ones, custom shop ones. I saw a custom shop Strat that was sub 1,000 euros. It just blew my mind. Metallic blue. And so it went. And so one of the things that I noticed, again, like I said, a lot of Strats, a lot of them not really priced really. And if you walked up with cash, you could probably see yourself getting off with another $100, $200 depending upon what you were looking at. And so, yeah, there was that. Strats, a lot of strats. The market's kind of flooded out there with them. Interesting enough. Uh, of course, me being the kind of guy that I am, and doing a lot of research into not Fender Strats. I know enough, and like I said, and boy, howdy, yesterday, if I didn't update my education on Strats, the necks from all eras, from the 50s on up, body shapes, colors, things like that. I mean, you name it was there. The whole plethora, the whole gamut was there yesterday. And that's why I kind of like going to those shows, because just for me, it's one thing to read about it in a book. It's another thing to actually touch it, talk to somebody about it, get some information on it, and see what it's really about. And so, if you do have a chance to go to a vintage show, and you have an afternoon off, I suggest you do it. You know, you might have some fun. You never know. I sure did. It was raining cats and dogs, but I still somehow mustered myself. I said, you know what, I'm still going to go. And also, with my research into stress, my looking into stress, as you guys know, recently I bought a 2001 Squire Affinity in Arctic White, and it has started to age beautifully, the neck and the body. And fortunately, it was in one piece. It wasn't, nobody had taken it and modded it. It was the same everything on it. And that's a rarity in itself. Pretty cool guitar, 2001, so that makes it a 22-year-old guitar. But I began to really take an interest in Strats, uh, you know, made around that time in that price range, not Fenders, as I was saying, but Squires. And I found out about a Squire. I don't know if you guys know about this, so please chime in the chats and we'll discuss it between us. But apparently, around 1998, Fender Squire put out a starter kit, and it was called the Fender. It was called the Squire SE Special Stratocaster or Telecaster. I think they had the two models, and it was a beginner's kit that had an amp in it, like the cheapest amp you could imagine, and the guitar. And they were retailing for around let's just say $300, just in the ballpark, around $300, around 1998, maybe a little less, in the 250 to 300. 98, these came out. This, and it was a kit. It all came in. You know, I think it even had a cheap little gig bag with it as well. And they came out with these from 98 until around 2012 or so. And that was it. And the models between, of course, there's always transition years with these kind of things. The models between 1998 and 2008, so 10-year range there, about a decade, are considered to be the ones to look for. Now, what is it that would make me bring this up? Well, the kind of cool thing about this Squire SC Special Strat, we'll talk about the Strat tonight, was that these, unlike the Affinity and unlike the Bullet, these were full body Stratocasters and full body Telecasters. So the body had full thickness to them. And they, depending upon the year, they were generally modeled after 1962 Stratocasters. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with the 1962 Stratocaster, I guess the most famous person I could is John. A guy, I can't think of his last name. Gosh, from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You guys know who I'm talking about. And he has a 1962 Stratocaster. And so these SE models, for whatever reason, so if you took out the amp, if you took out some of the other stuff, they were relatively cheaper than the Affinities and the Bullet, the Affinities at that time, not the Bullet, but the Affinities. And these were full-size bodies, and they were contoured and shaped like 62 Strats. Even the colors that they came in the first few years. John, for sure, yeah. Spell wrong for sure. Yeah, and that's how I would pronounce it. There we go. Yes, thank you guys. I would, I can't do that one. That's why it blanked. I did John F, and then I stopped there. Hey, welcome, welcome. It's amazing how 3K guitars gets shown up by Squire's Tokai Gretsch. Yeah. Flea is a do your first. No, not Flea. We're talking about John. So John's guitar, his 62 Strat. And so the cool thing about these SE kit beginner, again, yes, sir, models is that they are full size for whatever reason. And they are shaped out there based on the colors of the 62 Strats. And so they stopped making these. And of course, when you get into the mid 2015s, 2017s, and people start, there's always modders that are going to mod. A lot of guys began bumping into these secondhand on the used market and looking at it in the shop and, saying, hey, wait a minute, this thing is a full-size body. This contour looks like, a 62 Strat or Tele, again, like I said. I'm not sure about the Tele information, but the Strat for sure. And it's just right. And they love the necks. The thing about those, they had something about those necks. They were apparently more of a 50s neck. They weren't some of those thinner, nut width necks that were becoming more and more popular. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. Tom Wall, welcome. You got it right. We're all over the place here tonight. And I want to thank all you guys for taking the time to show up wherever you are, wherever the time zone finds you. And so they became the modders, a sought after modders guitar, because you could take these guitars. People like the necks. Some people would swap the necks, put Fender necks on them. Some would put Squire necks on them, or wear third-party necks, things like that. But mostly they keep the necks. And trick them out, put new, some people, I like ceramic microphones myself, to be honest with you guys. I think that the trick, or microphones or pickups, whatever language you prefer to use, to refer to them, I think it's in the pots and your caps. I think if you put in a .22 cap in there and you put your pots are 250K, I think that's the magic formula to making ceramic pickups sing. Of course, you gotta adjust the heights and you get it right for you. But if you have a ceramic pickup a guitar and you're not really happy with the sound of it, give that formula a try. .22 cap and 250K pots. And you will probably thank me. So a lot of people did stuff like that. Again, like I said, they changed the pickups, did a lot of modding on it, and it became a super, super popular modding platform for that reason. Because for the money that you could get them with, you could buy the whole guitar, find them used in pawn shops, secondhand places for 60 bucks. 60 bucks. Of course, the price on them went up as it got popular, and now they are actually hard to find. Believe it or not. Isn't that an interesting story, guys? So if you're out there looking for them now, I go .33 or .45 caps, much great range on the pickups. Yeah, making. I'm talking about with ceramics. With ceramics, I'm talking about a .22. and the 250K Plus is where to go. Probably in general, yeah, a 3.3 or a 4.7, yeah. But they are hard to find. Isn't that interesting? You know, they were, you know, not really looked at when they were available, that about a 10, 11 year span there. And then they became these super modern guitars, and because they look like 62 Strats, and if you could find one in that 62 Strat color, which is a sunset burst, then you know you got half the battle won there of doing something with that. And so they became really hard to find, and it was something that I had in the back of my mind. It was a file thing. Is when I started really looking into Strats. Well, another interesting thing happened. I found one, and I bought it. It's sitting here right next to me as we speak. I bought a second Stratocaster. I bought another one. And again, I bought it for all the reasons that I just listed with you. It's a great modding. As you know, with that Squire Affinity, I'm loath to touch it. As I said before, I'll say it 1,000 times, I'll say it again, that a bunch of other guys, or maybe one other or two other guys before me had it and didn't touch a thing and found it to be sufficient, and I do too. So I didn't want to mod that one. But I did want to get a full-size Strat. You know, the thing about that Affinity, it's comfortable as heck. That is probably the most comfortable Stratocaster. It's such a comfortable guitar, that Affinity that I have. I don't think they've changed that much over the years, but that one that year, that's a great one. In 2001, that particular model that year is also one that people in that color are. Like I said, I stumble upon these things, and the minute that I see them, I'm like, hey, I know what that is, and that's kind of rare because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, then I start getting into, do I want to buy this? But anyway, with that knowledge in hand, I stumbled across this, and you guys are going to laugh, but it is my second Stratocaster. I'll tease it a little bit here. Yes, it is in that 1962 sunset burst color. I go for starter caps and bags. Just that's funny, Maddie. So this is it. But guess what? Hey, Frederick, welcome. Welcome to the party. Just starting to show off my newest Strat. It doesn't have the neck. So I bought this the body only. That the seller was selling it just the body. And the truth of the matter is, I would have swapped the necks on it anyway, or to be honest with you, because the necks that came with this, not, hey, yeah, thank you. There's a couple of things there, but I'll get into that in a minute. But the guy had one of these, still all original condition. So this is a 2000 model. This is a 2000 Squire SE special. Again, full thickness body. It lets you guys take a look at the back. If you want to drop any Fender parts in here, replacement parts, they'll fit, unlike in the Squire Affinity. Reason number two, I wanted a full-size one. I could literally put any made in Mexico parts. They're interchangeable with this guitar. So that's another reason why a lot of people are kind of crazy about these, is because of that full-size body. You could really go to modder's heaven. You can go to town on this guitar. Yeah, I got rid of, like, so all of it still got the strap pegs on it. Came with the original tremolo. That's another thing about these. This hole for this, if you don't have the original tremolo, it's one of those parts that you will really find it hard, because the fenders won't fit with this, because I think it's a metric thing issue there in this case. But yeah, and if you try to force it in there, you'll strip your you'll have to just replace the whole thing if you really want to get into this. But came with the original one, original pickups, original pickguard. Again, everything all original. Guy even gave me the the screws. So when it comes time to put the neck in, I still have the screws, the original screws there, and the plate. So pretty cool. So again, as you can see from the color, that is, and it's from what I can see, this is a 4-piece body. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 piece that puts this thing together that I can see, and this is solid wood. Now a couple of things with the Sexy, my Tokai has a similar theme with the green pickguard. Do throw a warmer's neck on it. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Where was I? These, because of the fact that it's a full body, because you can do easy mods on it, this will be the one that I'll be modding. So, yeah, speaking of necks, you know, guys, I am almost of a mindset, and this thing is pretty good. I mean, you can look at that, guys. No scratches, no dings, nothing on that. Just immaculate condition. I am almost of a mind to put a Fender neck on this. And by the way, guys, I paid $60 for this. $60 US for this. 60 bucks. And I couldn't be happier. Especially on all original condition with all original parts. Very well taken care of. No dings, no dents. Just immaculate. In that 62 color that I kind of dig. I'm thinking about putting a Fender neck on this thing. I am seriously considering that because this is such a, this is a really, really great body on this thing. I am really impressed with this. Now, I was saying about woods. I was starting to get into woods. The Squire Affinity from 2001 is made from alder. And as you know, and it has a maple neck with a, hey, Dr. Phil, welcome. We'll get to, I keep, let me get to this thing about the bodies first, then we'll get to next. The 2001 is made from alder, and as you know, what color is the body? Bob. Yes, Bob. Hey, so Bob, 62 Strat is something called a sunset burst. It basically starts with a very light shading in the middle of the body going down to the bout. And then as it gets to the edges of the bout of the guitar, it gradually starts to get a brown, a reddish brown to a dark black, to almost black. So a 3-tone sunburst. Yes, thank you, Ben. 3-tone sunburst color. So this one is exactly that. And it's actually a little bit more because you've got the light, you've got a little bit darker brown, then you've got this red tint, almost like a cherry burst going into this really dark. And so, yeah, and that's exactly what a 62 should look like. And they got that down. I mean, talk about a so-called, student model. The paint job on this is better than some of the ones I saw on the Mexican ones. Only warm up because there won't be any stigma about it being a good Squire with a Fender neck. Having one with it will give it a whole lot more credibility. Hey, thank you, Ford. I appreciate you that's exactly what I'd like to hear about, talk about. But getting into the bodies, I'm going to remember that remark and co-sign on it. The body on the 2001 Affinity is popular. As you know, the popular maple neck with the rosewood fretboard is the classic wood combination of a Stratocaster. This model is also a 2000 2001 as well. Why is that? Well, around 2002 2003, they changed the pick guard on these to a red, not a brown, but a red tortoise shell, like almost very similar to what we had on my Mad Cat. That kind. If you guys are familiar with what a Mad Cat tortoiseshell pickguard looks like, they swap these. So after that, you'll see these on YouTube. Some of them, the older ones with the white pickguard like this, and you can tell too. It's faded out. I'll give you an example. I've got a Strat pickguard right here, and you guys can see how that one has aged. It started out. I like Fiesta Red Strat. Sounds nice, Mike. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you. You understand our meeting there. So here is when you buy new. This is what after 20 years it faded out to. And and the reason I have this, guys, is because I had halfway considered thinking about turning this into an SSH guitar. Because as you know, I've got Burstbreaker 2 and 3 set laying around here somewhere, and the Dry Z's as well. So I was thinking about going SSH, but I've changed my mind actually on that. I'm kind of digging it with the classic 62 Strat stuff. So I got this pick guard. It's been in some smoky thing, yeah. Well, yeah. That's look at that again. That's 20 years. So it started out looking like this, and now even the pickup rings have also aged as well, and the tip on this, not as much. I suspect this was in a box because maybe the owner didn't really use it, but it started to get a fade to it as well. A little bit of yellowing. This body is made from Agatha. I can never doggone it. You guys are gonna think his tongue isn't working. It's not. But anyway, it's a type of Asian alder. Again, I believe we would say that's in the same genus, but not quite. Keep the aged plastic. They look well. That's the thing. I mean, like I said, with this 22 years on this. You've got yourself in a situation where you've got yourself a cool looking thing, and I was glad to stumble upon this, especially with the white pick guard, because like I said, the later ones after this year or a year or so after this one, they changed over to the red tortoiseshell, which looks good as well, but again, classically the 62 had a white pick guard like this, well now aged to cream. And so with those two differences in terms, thank you. With those two differences in the wood, that's the only kind of little thing you're giving up. You don't have a true popular body with these SEs, but again, full-size body, a modder's dream, and I might, and to be frank with you, I'll experiment with the pots and caps in this. And I'm not even planning on changing the pickups on this. But now let's talk about necks. As was earlier said, only Warmouth because there won't be any stigma about it being a Squire with a Fender neck. Yeah, I was of three thoughts on that. So I'm glad you said that. First thought was I was thinking about buying a Fender neck. The reason I said that is here in the Netherlands, we have our equivalent of like an online classified called Marktplaats. And I saw some guy today, was selling a Fender neck for 100 euros, which is a scream. Earlier I was asked how much necks go for. Well, if you order your necks from China, let's get into that. Let's answer that question. If you order a neck from China, from a reputable company, and if you're looking, I have one I can suggest to you. You can always ask me down in the comment section. There's one that I deal with. Those necks, if you want one that really has the shape, it's a headstock shape is where it's going to trip you up. That's going to be, whether you're going to have to ask yourself, is that an important thing or not to you? And it probably is in this case. But if you find one that has a proper headstock shape to it, those will start running you with a rosewood fretboard, a maple neck. Those will start running you around $90, about 100 up with shipping. We'll say about 110 walking out the door. That's basic, level neck. Then, of course, you can get into a Fender neck. Fender necks, and the reason why this guy said, I was just too late. It came up in my feed, and I hesitated because I was doing something. I got back to it and said, "Hey, I'll take it," because I thought about it. I was like dusting, and I was like, why the hell didn't you jump on that? But somebody that snapped it up right. You got to move fast sometimes with these things. So that's why I was thinking the Fender Neck. But a Fender Neck, generally, guys, some of you guys know out there, will run you around $230 to $280. Really good quality necks, not made in China, but made in other countries. European countries will cost you about $200 for a Strat neck. I don't know how much the Warmoth necks cost. Roasted neck would look good on it. Again, I'm trying to, that roasted would be sweet. Again, it's got to be maple neck, roasted or not, maple fretboard. That's a combination I'm looking for. Warmoth, I don't know how much those necks. Could you chime in here if you guys out there know how much those are going for that combination? But you can see it can range you anywhere from about $100 on up on getting a neck. Now, that leads you to option number 3. One of the things that Fender boasts that on their website, so you can look it up, this is just not Mike talking, but one of the things that they boast is that all of their necks on all of their Squires, Warmers are hideously expensive. All right, we've got our answer there. Because again, the idea is to get the best that you can get going, and you got a good start going here, obviously body-wise. Coupled with keeping it inexpensive, because part of the thing of I'm good is saying, okay, I'm good, but I can probably find something, put it together myself now, that'll be inexpensive, and I'll be just a little bit better. And that's kind of what this is. So I thought another option would be a Squire Neck, a true Squire Neck. It's a Squire Body. And since Fender says all of the necks across their line fit in all of their bodies, why not just put a Squire Neck into it? So therefore you don't have the stigma of putting a Fender Neck on a Squire Body. You've put a Squire Neck on a Squire Body, and also the cost of it is it's a lot more cost effective. It's that third option that I said you always should look for. Mike, I can send you a Squire Neck. I have a spare one over here. Mickey, you don't have to send it, but I'll buy it off of you. Is it maple with? I don't want them. Bakers aren't choosers. I'll take it. Whatever. But if it was the maple neck with a rosewood fretboard, that would certainly spook me. But a Squire Neck is what I've decided to put in. And Mickey, write me and let me know about that. I'll buy it off of you. You've always been so kind to me. What do you think about buying from AliExpress? Well, again, that's what I said. A reputable Chinese company, and you got to dig through them. I found one. It's the one that I bought those pickups that I replaced in the Harley Benton guitar a few clicks back. We talked about. Those came from this company. I've been dealing with the switch tip on. I had to find a replacement amber switch tip that was the right color amber, vintage amber, not the kind of cheesy one that Gibson puts out for a ridiculous amount of money, but a correct one for a fraction of the cost I got from those guys. So you got to find yourself one, and if you find one, stick with them. They pissed me off last time with the shipping, but they're generally, but it got here and it was great. It was packed well. So that's my advice on AliExpress. You'll dig through there, find yourself one. Again, I can give you mine. I can tell you the name of my guy. Just write down the description below. Say, hey, Mike, what's the name of your guy in China? And I'll tell you. Mickey, I appreciate that offer. Please write me, yeah, Squire Neck. So I'm looking for a Squire Neck because it's such a cost-effective thing. You can find a whole Squire Affinity body with the neck for 68 to between 80 bucks. Just take the neck off of that, and you know you got a neck. It's not quite what I'm looking for. I like a Squire neck, but it'll do. A Squire neck. If you buy one for about $130 tops, you know you get, and you know the body and the neck. And again, you could take the neck off and stick it on here. I was just going to kind of peruse and wait till somebody out there was selling one, but Mickey was kind enough to have one possibly for me, and I'm going to say hooray. Because this is sad. There's nothing worse than a guitar without you're missing some, you're missing, you know, a big part of the party there. You know, the business end is not there. That's not good. So I appreciate that. I look forward to hearing from you, Mickey, on that. Yeah, Squire Neck. So it'll be a Squire Neck on a Squire Body. Now, there's some cool things that you can do with that Squire Neck. You know, you can tint them. You can put new tuners on it if need be. You can put a new neck on it. Your Squire has no head, yeah. It's been on so many parts as I work entirely for 2 local shops. Yeah, Mickey, thank you. Again, I'm still in shock over you making that offer. I appreciate that. You can do some work where you sand off the Squire decal, and you can get yourself an old-fashioned Squire decal and put it on there and make it look a little cooler, and then put a couple of coats over on top of that lacquer and go to town on that. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. So that's what this is going to be. So this is my Partscaster. I will be the owner of Partscaster, but it will still be a Squire. Squire Body, Squire Neck is my dream for this, and I think it'll be awesome. I truly do. I think it would be just awesome. So it was just a luck to find one. These really are hard to find. You guys look out there and look for the Squire SE Special. If you come across them, you'll either see it again in this color, the Sunset Fade or Sunset Burst or whatever they call it, I forget. With the white, that'll let you know that's an early 1998 to 2001 model. And then, of course, the tortoise shell, that's also a tip-off that you've got one. I mentioned before that Squire Affinity had the Squire Affinity and the Squire Standard. These bodies are based on those early Affinities, and that's Squire Traditional, as we talked about that they had before. This is a Squire Traditional body, if that means anything to you guys out there. It's a full-size body. Hey, Anthony, welcome. Welcome to the party. So yeah, fantastic find, super inexpensive. And again, it would just be my dream. You know, the best guitars and the ones you hold on that I found in over my years are the ones that that you put together yourself, that you have a bond to them. So this one would be, you know, the Affinity is a great guitar, but I got a feeling that this one is going to be something else. Are you going to swap the pickups or keep them stock? Like I was saying before about keeping these are ceramic pickups. I really love the sound of the pickups and everything in the 2001 Affinity Strat that I got. I like the sound of ceramic pickups. I can go either way, on nickel or ceramic. I'm an equal opportunity guy, but you do have to have the right caps, and you got to know the right values on your pots and your caps to make them work and know what you're working with. Ceramics, as I was mentioning earlier, work better with a .22 cap and 250K pots. Although through it was also suggested .33 or .47 would also work as well. So you can experiment with that. It's fun. Again, like I said, it's fun. And you may find your same and be like, holy crap, I hated the way this thing sounded before, but now, man, it just sings. And again, the pickups are a big deal. Um, but following that chain through the guitar to the pots and caps, that's gonna make a difference as well, especially when you're dealing with ceramics. Now, if you notice, how's everybody out there? Thank you. I see 18 people out there and 7 likes. There's something wrong with that math. Hit those likes, guys. Hit the likes for me. It makes a big difference. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, crazy week, guys. So more guitar on another guitar safari. I was beating the bushes and I came across another Strat. I never had a Strat in my life, and in the last few months now I got two. Well, at least one and a half. Bob says, I think the Strats recommended parts are other Fender parts for very reasonable price that may be something. Stratosphere is a company. Stratosphere. All right, Bob, I will take a look into Stratosphere. Thank you. Parts wise, yeah, I'm going to keep the pickups to answer that question in a long-winded way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the neck because I'm so curious. I said I wasn't going to mod that Squire Affinity, but what I am going to do this week, if you notice, I didn't have any regular program this week. Hey, welcome. We are well, and I hope you are well as well. Thank you for joining us here tonight. You're so welcome. I am super curious about how this sounds, so I'm going to take the neck off my Squire Affinity just for a short period. I'm not, like I said, I'm not making any mods to it, but that's a neck swap just to see. First to see, if that Squire Affinity neck fits in here. The second thing, it should. The second thing is just to crank this sucker up and hear how it sounds and make judgments as to what needs to be changed or not on it. Won't know until I listen to it. And like I said, the business end of this is entirely missing. So what I'll do is just for now, so I will film that. So I'll film me removing the neck off that Squire Affinity. I'll play it. Yeah, I will do a little sound test, and we'll hear how that thinner body Affinity sounds. And both of these guitars are over 20 years old, so they got that going for them in terms of the wood and all that. So I'll put that Affinity neck on this, and then I'll play this one. I'll film that, and we'll see how this one sounds compared to that. So that would be fun. And again, like I said, it just gives me until I can get a neck for it, at least to give me an idea. I can start seeing what I'm working with here, if anything needs to be changed or not. But it is my Strat, and I am trying to get it as close to a 62 as possible. So we shall see. Now, another thing that I filmed this week is something that I'd like to call the evolution of guitar pedals. The evolution of guitar pedals. Another theme tonight I'd like to talk about. In the 1970s, when I was but a wee lad, it was widely believed that pedals, like the Electro Harmonix pedals, the early ones, or the early Boss pedals, were nothing more than just novelties. And the name of the game then, the name of the game in the 1970s and the early part of the 80s was gain. So this, again, I've alluded to this before. This was the period, the 1970s was the golden age for amplifiers going into the early 80s with Dumbles and stuff like that. But Dumbles were being made in the 70s, late 70s as well. So that was the golden age of tube amps and solid states as well that started to come in. Golden age. Well, they had been in, but you guys know what I mean. Golden age. And even then, it was like, that's why solid state amps were kind of like, kind of poo-pooed and looked down on because the real name of the game was to have a tube amp. Well, pedals came along, and you can imagine that for a professional who had tube amps and at gain, a high volume, low gain, just to drive them, or a little bit, or maxing the gain out, depending upon who it was. The thought of a pedal, it was nothing that replacing that. It sounded thin to them. It sounded tinny. It didn't push air. It just was something that they just didn't dig. Also, if you took those, and that was, and the way to get those things to work is you really got to play them at high gain. So when you got to the home enthusiasts, the garage bands, and guys who couldn't play at high volumes because the neighbors or the wife or whatever reason, they didn't like them either, because in order to really get something out of those pedals, again, you had to operate them at high gain. That's how they were designed. So they just didn't have a really, those early pedals of that era were just not considered to be a thing. Now, starting in the 1990s and moving to present day, these same pedals, I'm looking at my show notes over here, by the way, guys, just in case. These same pedals have become highly sought after. Highly sought after. Why is that? Now, one of the things that happened in the 1980s that helped pedals out a lot was a lot of guys, the new guitar players of that era, were really using them. I've used Prince before, and his use of exclusively of Boss pedals. And you can extrapolate from him and think of guys that you know of that you can think of. I can certainly think of, speaking of Strats, Stevie Ray Vaughan certainly had a love affair with tube screamers. And so they began to start to take off again. There began to be an interest in pedals. You get to the 1990s and the early 2000s, and boutique pedals come out. Two things happen. Boutique pedals come out, and amps that are, you can play them at low wattage, but you can have pretty good gain out of them. Like my Laney. My Laney has a built-in attenuator of 1 watt or 15 in it. I mostly pay the 1 watt, obviously. And even that can scream. But this was something that wasn't around in the 70s and the 80s, this type of amp. The other thing that happened was the boutique builders started coming out. You had the advent of this pedal. I think everybody knows what this is. One man in his garage building these, definitely is the boutique pedal of all time, the Klon Centaur. This is my copy of it. It's a really good copy of it, almost note for note. And this was the beginning of the boom in terms of pedals out there. This is those two things that happened: low wattage amps and boutique pedal builders. So that pedals like this one, this Nobles from the 90s, has, and its cousin, the Nobles Overdrive. Everybody knows that one, green one. Same from the same line, built the same as this. These have become very sought after. Whereas when these first came out, you couldn't give these away. Same thing with the Nobles Overdrive. You couldn't give those things away because it came out in that period between, as I was saying, the boutique builders and the advent of the boutique builders and the low wattage amps, and then the status quo that preceded before that. Then of course, when you get to our era, suddenly, the brother to this same line against this is from the same year, same line as the original Nobles Overdrives, same circuit. I saw one for $1,500 for a Nobles Overdrive, and they've just blew up. And so it's funny to me that the perceptions are shifting once again. Part of this change is fueled by the excellence of modeling amplifiers and the availability of high quality low wattage amps. Again, low wattage amps still playing a role there, but modelers starting to step in there, and as the perception is starting to change again on terms of even pedals. Because you got things out there where you can model this pedal, and then you don't have to worry about lugging this around on a pedal board. You can just bring the modeler. Not only that, but you can model this as well. So it's an interesting progression to see how that went and how that happened. I don't know how you guys feel about 90s pedals. Are any of you guys out there collectors of 90s pedals? I'm sure some of you are, and if you are, if you have a tube screamer, whether you know it or not, you're kind of a collector of a 90s, actually in that case, a late 70s pedal, or a Big Muff, for example. Yeah, dig that. That's how that progression happened. That's how we got to this point. Also, last week somebody had talked about the price of pedals. The price of pedals are crazy. Yeah, it was, again, that boutique expansion that happened, where boutique builders came out, and they weren't building them in mass, so they couldn't get the break in cost that the mass producers could. So they had to buy their parts when they could at cost, but generally off the shelf, especially in the case of the early clones with Bill Flanagan, when he was putting those together. He was awarding those special diodes from all over the place that still had them. And they upped the price of the cost of a single unit. And then they were selling like hotcakes, and I'm sure at first the big manufacturers over at Boss were like, yeah, who the hell is going to pay, $200, $300 for that pedal without knowing any history? Well, it turns out a lot of people did. And you saw a big boom, like JHS pedals. There's a big thing between Josh at JHS pedals and Nobles. He actually was in on discussions of designing this line. That's how far back he goes. And so that expansion happened. And the prices went up. And the big manufacturers said, oh, well, maybe we should up our prices as well. And so they did. The Boss pedals became more expensive, and also they started coming out with their, reissues. That's one of my favorite electronic guitar tunes is the Big Muffs. Smashing Pumpkins. I had made a note here of another band, Queens of the Stone Age. Really dig that. And so that expansion of boutique builders did a couple of things, positive and negative. It certainly affected the cost of pedals. But what it did was it gained an interest in those older ones. And then spark that where, a bad monkey pedal, that was a $15, $20 pedal. Somehow people were trying to sell those for $500, $600, $700 there for a minute. It turned into pedal mania, and that happens sometimes. That's what happened with these Squier SEs. Once it hit the internets, that these were, full-size, great, better, as good as made in Mexico bodies. it kind of got a mania and people bought them up. And that's one of the reasons here now in 2023 that just 8 years time, it's kind of dried up. And you got to kind of do a little bit of safari now for those. So it happens. But in that case, I digress there. But getting back to that progression of the why the amps are now the dinosaur things, why those are dinosaurs, what happened in between that led to that progression? Why is it that pedals were considered to be, the Japanese word is mama or so during that era, and now pedals from that era are going for big money. Find yourself, look for original Big Mother and see how much that'll run you. So that's how that happened, and I'm expanding upon a show that I've already shot that I'll be releasing this week. I wanted to get a couple of in the can. I've decided I've been kind of doing them one at a time, one off, and then I hate it on a Sunday night like around this time when I'm wrapping up and I'm getting ready. What am I doing this weekend? I have no idea. It's not good. So I decided to get a couple. That's one that I've already shot. The next one that I'll be shooting is just seeing if that Fender Neck fits on this SC, and if so, what does this SC sound like? And my thoughts on that. So those, I'll get those two in the can, and so that's a good thing. But the pedal one is a shorter version of what I just got into right now. So it's a little bit of truncated for those who don't watch the live stream. They'll be able to see that, where I talk about why 90s pedals are now, so popular and expensive, and was that always the case? And the answer to that is no. No, they were not. You know, yeah. Speaking from personal experience, being a musician in the 1980s, turned 13 in 1980, so that's the beginning of my, really getting into garage bands and stuff like that. And we never really thought about pedals too much, to be honest with you. The only pedal that you really had to have was a wah-wah pedal. That was the pedal for before you bought anything else, before you thought about finding out what the heck is a Big Muff, who is this Electro Harmonix company, what's a Boss distortion, before you got even thought about that, you thought to yourself, hey, I need a wah-wah pedal. And you learned how to. I've got, it's funny, it's almost like obligatory, and I still have a wah. This is my Motone vintage wah. I still have this will always be. This was the first pedal, not this one, but this is the first style of pedal that I ever bought, and I still want to have one to this day. That tells you about how serious it was as a pedal to have a wah-wah pedal. The cool thing about wah-wah pedals, you didn't have to plug them into anything. They're battery operated. They ran on a 9-volt. And you do volume things with them. They were cool once you learn how to work them. And plus, if you really want to learn how to play funk, or some of the other riffs that you could do with wah-wah, you had to have one. So wah-wah pedals, that was the pedal to have. That was the one. And I've literally had one since I was 14. I've always had one. Funny stuff, but true story. And that's how it was from personal experience during that time. We weren't thinking about pedals. Yeah, funk needs wah. Yeah, and a lot of rock. On my album that I just put out, Ants in the Pantry, on the song "If We Were Made for Each Other," that's a Telecaster Telecaster going through a wah-wah. Telecaster, I do believe Telecaster going through this wah-wah on the guitar parts. And so for some rock songs, you got to have it too. Hendrix was a habitual wah-wah user. And volume pedal and a wah-wah. And a Big Muff, I do believe. Those were the 3 pedals that he had. And that was pretty much it. Everything else was, driven through the Marshall stack and Marshall head. So, you know, that was the thing. That's how I saw things in the '80s, and that was all the other musicians around me. And I lived in Los Angeles, and attended school in West Los Angeles. Plus, was a good time. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, yes, sir. Jimmy knew that, so that's why he had it. I was attending UCLA classes in the 10th grade because I was part of a magnet program. So I was around a lot of musicians, you know, young and old. And that was the general consensus of that time. It was your amp. Everybody was trying to get themselves a Marshall head and at least a 2x12, you know, not a 4x12 if you were brave. But everybody, and that's why Marshall was putting out a lot about 1x12s and 2x12s during that time as well. Because they were in the band, that's what people wanted. They sounded like, not all the '80s Marshalls sound great. Some people tell you that there's some that sound okay, but the '80s is not my favorite era for Marshalls. Hey Anthony, I appreciate you buying that album, by the way. I'm going to start. No, I don't have patrons on this, but what I'm going to do in my regular shows is I'm just going to, at the end, I'm going to say thank you to everybody who bought a copy of my album. If you guys want to support this channel, because there is no ad revenues. If the big channels are complaining about their ad revenues, imagine where I'm at. If you want to support this channel, yeah, Mickey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm gonna list. I hope you guys enjoy. I'm gonna do a Patreon thing where I'm just gonna start listing between now, maybe going at least into the near to distant future of everybody who bought it at the end, and just say a special thank you. I was thinking about that the other day when I was taking the train to the guitar show, because train ride between here is nothing but cows, sheep, and horses and pastures. It's beautiful, but you can drift off, and I thought about that. So that's what I'm going to do with that. So to everybody who bought a copy, first, I hope you like it. Second of all, thank you so much. And please support this channel. If you haven't got one, buy one. But yeah, that's what we're going to be covering this week. We're going to be talking about, we're going to talk about, again, a truncated version of talking about why these pedals are now so expensive and so popular. And then we'll follow that up with me doing the neck swap. It's not the permanent neck for it, but just so that I can at least test the electronics and see what's going on with this this Squire SE with the Affinity neck. And so I will film that as well. That should be interesting. Yeah, for a guy who never had a Strat before, now, like I said, I got two. It's so funny to me. But, you know, I was walking along and I said, hey, wait a minute. What is that? That looks interesting. You know, and yeah, now it's sitting here next to me. And yeah, so you never know. I don't know. You were oh yeah. Mickey hipped us to that a little while back. I kind of figured because he was kind of my Telecaster, as you know, has some parts that Mickey sent over. I got a gig in the '70s with an R&B band because I had a Crybaby wah pedal. Does it need any other parts to complete? No, Mickey, no, sir. That's the thing about it that's super cool. Is the fact that it's got everything. It's just missing the neck and of course tuners. I got a set of tuners laying around here somewhere if the neck doesn't have tuners. So no, that's all it needs is a neck. It's a funny thing. I've never bought one like just a body like this before, but doggone it, with this kind of success, I might do it quite often. Who knows? But yeah, you had a Crybaby wah-wah. That was the thing. My friend, who's a multi-instrument, you can hear him. This neck has tuners on. Well, Mickey, you got me with neck. There's no need to put the butter on the toast. I appreciate it. Hey man, write me. I'd love to get it. I'm not kidding. As a matter of fact, to know that it comes from you, that I would take a lot of stress and worry from me. So yeah, please, Mickey, thank you. God, I mean seriously, thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll complete this, and that'll be my strat. That'll be my strat. That'll be my strat. And then we'll mod it from there if necessary. We'll see where it's at. We'll start again, like I said, with the electronics. It's always where I start. I always start with the first. I check them out, see if there's rust, see if there is a 20-year-old guitar. I see no evidence of rust around with the screws or anything like that, so I think that's a bonus as well. That means there's no kind of dampness in the wood or anything like that. It's been well kept. Not a scratch on it. Not a scratch. Interesting. Just missing its neck. But thank you guys for that. Crybaby Wawa. A friend of mine had that. John. He was a multi-instrumentalist. You can hear him on the song by Fishbone Party at Ground Zero. He's the guy playing the trombone on that. John McKnight. He's the first cat in my neighborhood that I know who had a Crybaby Wawa, and he taught me how to use a Wawa by learning. What was it, the theme from Shaft or something like that? I forget we were doing with that. You know, that was a thing during then. I don't know what that is now. All right, guys. I still got 15. I hate it when I got such a large audience, and I'll keep going. I don't have to stop. I just wanted to touch on those few things, a little bit of housekeeping there. What'll be coming up on the regular show. I appreciate you supporting that, as well as, my thoughts on the album and just thanking the supporters of this channel that way and listing their names. I will do that. So you will see that at the end of every regular video. And those are the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about, really. The guitar show and how it led to this. And also talk about pedals a little bit, because I found that question last week about why the price of pedals are so expensive. It's because of boutique makers. They're the ones that caused it. You can directly trace it back to them. And again, like I said, boutique makers also gave us some of the most awesome pedals imaginable. So it was a bittersweet kind of thing. But I just want to talk to you guys about that tonight. Actually, I will call it. You better to stop while you're ahead. Somebody once told me, can you say who you use on AliExpress? Well, that's the thing. I don't have my phone with me right now, so that's where it's at. Jeepers, is there any other way that I can learn? Yeah, it's on my phone, and I don't have that in the room with me. But what I'll do is I'll put it down in the description of this video. I'll do that myself. So just look for it down there. I'll get to that in the morning. Thinking about giving them a try. Well, please do. I can recommend these guys. They're a parts shop. They're out of China. I do believe it's an American guy who's running it, as I seem to recall. But they've got everything. They've got everything. I was going to suggest you turn this into an hour and a half show. Well, yeah, I can do that. I can certainly do that. I've been thinking about that because we've certainly started to get an audience here. And I certainly have things to talk about. I just worry that I wear out my welcome after an hour. I find it surprising and utterly shocking to find out about myself, because I always considered myself to be kind of an introvert, to be honest, guys. I mean, to be truthful about it, and I was kind of proud about that. But the fact that I can sit here and talk, Ben, I appreciate that. We'll go for an hour and a half tonight. But the fact that I could sit here and talk on subjects and keep a steady thread and sometimes connect different threads together over the course of an hour is a skill that I didn't think that I had. So doing a live stream, I know a lot of guys don't want to do live streams. It's good to have the dialogue. Yeah, it is. And it's good for my soul to sit here and talk to you guys. I am an introvert generally in the rest of my regular life. Other than when I'm dealing with, and by the way, the reason, well, other than when I'm dealing with my clients, I'm generally here in my place with my pets. um, would love to hear more about your time in LA and your other childhood music stories. Well, we can get to that to wind up tonight a little bit. I was kind of hinting towards that. You know, uh, you kind of, how do I always say this? Nobody's forcing anybody to stay and watch. I wouldn't want to do it to myself if I was droning on with a bunch of malarkey. I wouldn't do that. That's why I try to keep it interesting. I know that I've got an hour's worth of good material, solid material, like I said, in me. I can stretch that out to an hour and a half because I should talk more about what it was like in the 70s and 80s. But I will say that I was always a bit of an introvert, always. And music actually was a way to kind of, I thought, to bring me out of that. Because I like to read a lot. I was always reading. We could always shoot the breeze. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything serious subject. I do, again, like I said, I do want to keep, I do like to have these with a certain, I don't want to just do too many streams of thought. As you saw tonight, I was reading from show notes. I do make notes and try to keep a theme going with these live streams with you guys to keep it interesting and to share with you things that I find interesting. These are really things that I just find interesting. You know, to know about, okay, the thickness of Squires are only with the SC, the traditional, and the older first run affinities. I mean, that's trivia, that guitar trivia, but it's something that's it's really something that you need to occupy your time with. Well, I'm here to do that for you. I fulfill that role to let you know, and maybe it's something that you say, "Hey, I didn't know that. Maybe I'll look into that." So that's kind of what this live stream was always about. It was a talk about, and sometimes deep things. Sometimes, like I said, I'm laying off it tonight, but and that's the third thing that I'm filming is I'm really writing up a script, and I've been researching about the amount of wood that's used in producing guitar. And again, it's not just wood; it's the plastics, it's the wood, the runoff from the chemical waste from that, the runoff from the polyurethane, from the nitro, all of that stuff, and going out into the environment. I'm sure the Semic factory is, toxic, to some extent because of that. I'm sure they have great waste management, but still, that's a lot of stuff to be processing. And again, like I said, that's the one serious issue that it's kind of bothering me. And that's why I believe in giving guitars like this, even though it's missing a head. I said, you know what, I'm not going to walk on by. This thing could be a killer. I think it is. I think it's going to be. Certainly got a lot of love going into it, so that's always a good start. But I believe in giving secondhand chances to secondhand guitars, or second chances to secondhand guitars, and that's kind of my motto around here. And it ties into, again, like I said, I'm good seriously because you got to buy. You're gonna buy things, and you're gonna want to try things. I like to experiment with Strats. But I think I know enough about Strats now, the woods and pickups and things of that nature, that I could probably put something together for a fraction of the cost of a Fender, although those things are going for super deals. Like I was saying, boy, at that vintage show yesterday, they were really going for cheaper, shocking prices. But you can put one together, and I want to show that. And plus, like I said, it's personal, it's mine. I always admired Eddie Van Halen. He put together up until the mid 2000s. He pretty much built his own guitars. Admire that. I always admire. I admire guys who know how to do stuff, woodwork and parts and stuff like that. I admire working with your hands. So, an introvert, the music thing really was to bring me out and get me with friends. So, in my neighborhood in Los Angeles, as I've mentioned before, um, it Windsor Hills is a very nice area in Los Angeles, and we have garages there. And because it's California, Southern California, nobody parked their car in the garage. So most converted their garages into a second room, or illegally or illegally, mostly illegally, or a studio, which is the ones that I went to. Guys converted them into studios so that we could jam. Some super sophisticated, some for that time era. Some of them just basic, just put some carpet on the door leading into the house and on the garage door. That was kind of the soundproofing that we did. It was all carpet. Oh, old moldy carpet, so it stank like hell in there, and it was hot in the summer because you had blocked all the draft points. But I got hanging with those guys, and it got me. And so music was good for me in that regard. But again, I was talking about, and we were gonna, and this is good too because I can get in a little bit more into what it was like in terms of this kind of stuff and during that time. Now we're talking about 1981 through 1985 period. And I'm hanging with all kinds of musicians again, like all from all over LA. I knew a guy named Steve DeMont. I've told you about him before. This guy had a 57 Les Paul Custom in high school. He had a 57 Les Paul Custom. Nicest guitar that and that was kind of cool, and he wasn't shy about it. He wasn't one of those guys like man, looky no touchy. He wasn't like that. I'd go over to his house and I'd be like, Steve, man, can I play? He'd be like, sure. So I got, from the age of 14 to 15, I was playing a 57. Well, yeah, occasionally I got to touch a 57 Les Paul, a real real deal Les Paul. That's how I knew a quality guitar from an early age. And that was unique, but that's because I was in LA and I was around cats. Steve DeMont was from West LA, and they generally had the money. His parents were wealthy enough to afford him, and during that time, you're looking at 3 to 4 thousand maybe at that time guitar, which was a lot of money. Now you know how much those things are going for, but at that time you're looking at a $4,000 guitar. He had it, and I played it. It was awesome. But again, what was he running that through? He was running that through a Fender Deluxe, and no pedals. And again, like I said, I think about Drake Gooseby, the other guy that I learned funk guitar from, and also taught me how to use the wall pedal. Him and John. Did he have any pedals? No, no, no. He had a Squire and Sears, a Sears amp, a real Sears amp. That's that he got from a pawn shop somewhere. That was his rig, but no pedals. Pedals weren't a thing, other than the wall wall. And if you had a crybaby wall, you were in there. You could get the gig. Like somebody just mentioned, just they got the gig because they had that pedal during that time. And so that's really what you needed. Uh, we weren't thinking about overdrive and distortion other than what we could get out of our amps. And most of our amps were solid state amps. We didn't have tube amps. Um, we weren't from that side of town. We were from the tube amp side of town, like Steve DeMont. Still a great neighborhood, but it was not. I mean, I'm sure the older musicians, the real pro musicians that lived there, because as I told you, Stevie Wonder lived there at one point. Ray Charles lived in that area at one point. Little Richard, I was literally walking down the street, and I would look over, and there's a guy in a white Rolls Royce you know, looking at you, and it's Little Richard. I'm like, Little Richard, take your ass on. But yeah, for real. I remember him so distinct quite a few times. What a weirdo, but what a great musician. But yeah, I'm sure they had that kind of gear, but the teenagers, the kids on the block, we generally had solid state amps, and we had to work with that in whatever guitar level you could afford. Mostly Squires, mostly Squires, and quart guitars. So, which were Korean made. So that was us, and that was my experience, and that's that social group of being in a band, a loose band, a jam band, um, antagonisms, things like all friendships and things that came out of that really was the foundation of why I gravitated towards music. You can get the same thing in sports. If you become a member of a sports team, you've got that, got that kind of thing. Growing up in Southern California back in the 80s and 90s had to have been amazing. Yeah, it was. I'll tell you what was even more amazing was Southern California in the 1970s. You see those old TV shows like Three's Company, and you see that idyllic kind of a life with the beach blondes and bikinis, and everybody's thin, and the weather's great. And it really was like that. It really was. I used to love to go to Santa Monica, the beaches, uh, because there wasn't the kind of building. A lot of the buildings weren't there. A lot of the houses they built up on the shore were there, so the beaches were even bigger. And it was something. It was something to grow up there. The weather was a lot different than it is now, though, as I'm sure it is in most places. But yeah, that social bond, you can get in a sports team as well. But I didn't like sports. I went with musicians. I bet it's very different from growing up in East London in the 1970s like I did. Well, I got a little sample in 2005 to 2008 of London, so if it was anything like that, then yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if you remember the winter of 2008. It snowed, uh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt there. Right after Guy Fawkes Day, so Guy Fawkes Day with it. That's mid December or December. Right after Guy Fawkes Day, a week or so after that, it snowed. And in all the years that I lived there, it never snowed like that again. I'll never forget that snow of the winter. Winters, I guess that would be 2007, 26, 2007. It snowed there. And so, no, there was none of that in Los Angeles. Um, but that was a beautiful day. I remember that snow. I'll never forget that in London, in the Blackheath. But Majors, I never saw Little Richard in my neighborhood. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Windsor Hills was considered to be, and I don't like using this term. I grew up in those decades in Canada, but skateboarding and rock magazines, dreaming about selling, reading. Yeah, yeah, I was there. The thing about Windsor Hills, and I don't like to use this term because it's not its history. Windsor Hills is near Culver City. It's between Culver City and Fox Hills. It's hills. It's a hillside area, like Beverly Hills. It's a hill. There's hills on this end of the LA basin. There's hills on this end. On this end are the old oil fields, the area they call Windsor Hills. Pill Hill was its original name. Then you got the LA basin, and then you got Beverly Hills. So Beverly Hills here, Windsor Hills on this end. And this was originally called Pill Hill. It was started in the 1940s as the 1930s. The Olympics went through at LA and Los Angeles. That was the Olympic training ground. And then developers turned into a housing track. And then doctors and lawyers moved out there, and they built some fantastic, beautiful houses. Segregation came in, and also Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes at Hughes Aircraft desegregated his company TWA Transport Airlines, hired my dad as a pilot for TWA, and a bunch of other African Americans as other positions in his company, and they all began to move into the Pill Hill, Windsor Hills area because they could afford it, into these really nice houses, and that's where I grew up. And then the '70s came, and a lot of the musicians and basketball and actors found out, black actors found out about this area, and they moved up there as well. And so it became a predominantly uh, middle to upper class black area in Los Angeles that you don't hear about very often. That's where I grew up. It's kind of a, you know, I knew what was going on down in the hood, but I really didn't grow up with it. It was not something that ever really directly touched me, indirectly, but not directly. But a lot of musicians up there. So you were either into sports, acting, or music. Those were your kind of things that you went towards, and I gravitated towards that. And that period of time in Los Angeles, like I said, it's like in the movies. It really was like that, and especially in the '80s, it was like that. It was like Westwood. Watch American Gigolo with Richard Gere. That is what Westwood was like. You'll see the old Tower Records there on the corner. You'll get a snapshot of what that time period was like, and imagine I was there. I was there at Westwood during that. That was shot in '79. So yeah, I knew that area very well. I used to go to the movies there. And it was a very heady time. And if you were, like I said, especially if you were doing acting or music, and you were African American, you were in there. That's why everybody was migrating there from back east, from Chicago, New York. Everybody's heading to LA. The climate was better, and that's where the action was at. There was plenty of work, and I was lucky being a resident there and growing up there. I wasn't moving in there and then trying to find a place to live and struggling and doing all that. No, I was born and raised there and knew it very well. Had connections, so a little bit of a plus side there. Well, I was actually born in Fairfield, California, at the Air Force Base. My father was an aviator, and my mother was a officer as well. So, but I was born in California. So that's what it was like, man. It was really like that. And music, and the Guitar Center was the place, man. That place was jumping. It's funny. It's like Hot Tub Time Machine. It's like that hotel. Like they go back, they go there after they haven't been there for years and years and years, and they go there and they're like, "What the hell happened?" You guys know about that movie, Hot Tub Time Machine? Not two, but the first one. They go to the hotel, and it's like the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. It's just run down, looks all right, just crappy on the inside. They're like, "What the hell?" This place used to be awesome. Well, Guitar Center, that's what it is today. But back then in the '70s and '80s and '90s, it was the spot to be in. It was the place, especially the one on Sunset, because you had the whiskey up the street. You had the Viper Lounge where Phillips of River Phoenix offed himself at. A lot of stuff going on. I remember that night too. Anyway, I digress. That was happening. It was like the hotel back when they were going there when they were young. It was just happening. And that's where you went to go. It was all there. And you could try a lot of different things, and you started to get an education. So I was lucky in that regard too. It wasn't a small town or anything like that where I had to drive somewhere or I had to find somebody who happened to be interested in that. It was the Mecca, and it really was the Mecca. That was the place to go to. I remember when they first opened it. I believe it was '87 or maybe even before that. Yeah, maybe '87 they opened that. And I was there like that week and then on. And then, of course, years later, I went back and I was like, what the hell happened to this place? It's a shadow of its form. Nobody was there. It was empty. Shadow of its plenty of parking. Back then in the day, good luck park. You had to park on Sunset and feed that toll because the cops were just standing there waiting to write the ticket. Well, that's cool. What made you go overseas for music? What inspired you to pick up and move scenes? Well, I was working for a recording R&B artist called Babyface at that time. I was a second engineer working at his own studio called Yam Yum. He later changed it to Brandon's Way. I was working as a second engineer there and a gopher. I lived not too far by on Sunset and Highland, near Sunset and Highland. I had a place. So I lived in the neighborhood. So if they needed somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning to go run and do something, they could call me up, and I was there. So I got the job. I had to set up the Studer. They had two Studer tape machines of 24 tracks, so synced 48 tracks. You lose 2 tracks in the sync, so 46 tracks, I guess it was, or something like that, as I seem to recall. They had an SSL board in Studio One, and the other smaller studios had ADAT recorders and Mackie boards, stuff like that. My job was to make sure everything was running. My job was to set up the patch board for Brad Gilderman, which was a producer, I'm sorry, an engineer that Babyface used. My job was to get hamburgers for Outcast or anybody, or Tony Braxton, or get, set up the whiskey and coffee tray for Diana Ross. I had to do whatever job was necessary. I was an all around guy. Great job. As you know, intern jobs like that do not pay. They don't pay. But you could get side gigs out of that did pay because you had the connection. That's how I met Brian Aston Green, because they called me up and said, "Hey, pick up this thing from the studio from Yab Yum and take it to Westlake." Nice. And was the man that called the job CRLA? No, so I worked for Babyface. I never made Ellery Reed. I one day. Did you ever go to me? Did you ever go meet drug dealers? No. That's funny. I'll tell you guys my interaction with a witch cult, a witchcraft cult one is. Maybe I'll save that for the Halloween show. I'll tell you how I got invited into a coven, and we were all reading from Aleister Crowley's book. I'll tell you that story one of these days. No drug dealers. I was clean. I believed. It's ironic. I believed in Prince. Prince was somebody, obviously you guys can tell, that I looked at too, and I heard through the grapevine he had a very serious no drug policy. So the ironies of the fact that he died of a drug overdose, it's not lost on me. It makes me sad. But I didn't get into drugs back then. Um, I might on the weekend at Drake's, I go over to him and crash and maybe smoke a joint if he had it. He always, for some reason, he always knew he was the weed guy, but that's about it. Oh, for the artist, no, no, that was another guy. Literally that was another guy. That wasn't me. That was another guy who shall remain name, but he always hung out at the studio. But yeah, he was that guy. I wasn't that guy. I was extremely to the nth. I still kind of am. But no, myself, no, I never got into that. I didn't even drink, guys. I didn't like drinking. Very serious minded, and the thing was, I didn't pay. And when it did pay, you had to wait for it to come from the label down to the sub label, and then you got paid, and that took months. And I ended up taking a job. A friend of mine said, "Hey, work for 3 months over in Japan, playing piano," and I took that job, and that's how I ended up overseas. One thing led to another. So, but that's what it was like, guys, during that time. I was lucky to be there. You would see people like, I was walking up Sunset. I spent a lot of time because that's where all the labels were at, and that's where all the publishers were at. So if you wanted to hustle songs, you know, you were always up there going up to Chrysalis or other places, and you were hustling, you know, tracks, pushing tracks. But I would see Billy D. Williams. Billy D. Williams, I was walking up, and a Jag pulled up in front of me, and I looked inside. It was Billy D. Williams. I said, "Holy crap! It's Lando Calrissian." Holy crap! And I said, "Hey, Mr. Williams, how are you today?" He said, "Hello, sir." And he gave me a little thing, and he drove off. I said, "Wow, man." Blew my mind. But those are the things, you know, and a lot of other folks living in LA, you know, you live around actors and you kind of get used to it. But every now and then you'll see somebody and you'll be like, "Holy crap, it's Billy D. Williams." That's the one that stands out to me when I was on my walking up to Chrysalis Records. You guys won't believe this. At that time, yeah, awesome. Still is. At that time, as you can tell from my hair and my, you know, I'm of mixed descent. So I have my hair is curly, but it can be very straight. At that time, my hair was down to my shoulders and tied back in a ponytail. I know you guys can't imagine that straight hair because I had a girl press it. It's curly a little bit, but she pressed it out a little bit. Straight hair back in a ponytail, you know, black t-shirt, jeans, you know, Doc Marten boots. That was me. No tattoos, but that was me. That was that guy. True story. I had long hair. Just playing that role, but yeah, just one thing leads to another. Life generally, one thing leads to another. Opportunities, one opportunity will lead to the next one. I was standing on a street corner in Tokyo one day, and a guy walked up to me that I had never met before, and he offered me a job that ended up changing my life in yet another direction. So even opportunities, you got to be in the right place at the right time too. Where it's the right place and with the right time, well, it's certainly not sitting at home on your couch. You got to get out there and get about and experience things, and things will lead. Keeping it positive. If you're down a negative path, well, you know, stupid games they pay out stupid prizes. So you don't want to do that. Keep it positive. Keep the path positive. Try to. In this wicked world, it's difficult. But keep your path positive if possible, and doors will open for you. My mother always told me, you know, the key to life is make your own way. That's true. It's a line in one of my songs that recently I put out. But she actually said that the key to life, she told me, is to make your own way. Some people's, outdoor is an indoor. Sometimes you got to go in through the outdoor. If you guys can dig that. So keep that thought in mind. I will call this quits for tonight. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to show up. We made it to an hour. I actually stretched this out past an hour and a half. Amazing. It's amazing that all of you guys took the time to stay with me and listen. I want to thank you so much for showing up tonight. Stay tuned this week for the regular program. I will be putting out the talk about vintage pedals. And thank you for listening, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I can't do this by myself. I can't talk in a vacuum. Well, I guess I could talk in a vacuum. But I cannot do this without you. And it is a blessing to have you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Don Juan. And all of you guys. You know, I was talking about Mickey there. Thanks, Mickey. I was talking there about Mickey helping me out with my Telecaster here behind me and giving me some parts for it. And it's a ringer, too. And just, you know, it's the kindness and love, man, that really, I'll talk for days if it brings this kind of love into my life. So it is a pleasure to do so. You guys have a great week out there. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next rotation. Bye-bye.